The media news spin is on overdrive. The insanity coming out of the mouths of politicians, corporate executives, Hollywood elites, and assorted other personalities is shocking. And in this new reality of shock value media, that's saying a lot. How can the average American make sense of anything they hear from the American media today? The answer to that question involves a complete recalibration of mind and attitude concerning what is actually true information and what is offered to intentionally mislead and even obfuscate. My guest today is someone you should be listening to when it comes to parsing the news. She offers keen insights into what is really happening behind the headlines. Stay tuned for my conversation with investigative journalist Tracy Beanz in this episode of Soaring Eagle Radio.
Remember that your failure to be informed does not make me a wacko.
Well, the time has come, the walrus said, to talk of other things. Of shoes and ships and sealing wax and cabbages and kings.
I have certain rules I live by. My first rule, I don't believe anything the government tells me. And I don't take very seriously the media or the press in this country.
9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Hello, and welcome to Soaring Eagle Radio. Your host is Mike Spaulding. Get ready to be challenged and encouraged as you consider today's news and Mike's commentary from a biblical perspective. Now, let's join Mike.
Hi, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Soaring Eagle Radio. I'm very pleased to announce that Soaring Eagle Radio is now heard on Deception Detection Radio Network. It's now heard on Truth Be Told Radio Network. Thank you to Kay and Kevin for blessing me and Soaring Eagle Radio listeners with these new opportunities. And, of course, you can listen to us every Saturday night, 7 p.m. on Global Star Radio Network, Sundays at 8 a.m. on Talk America Radio Network. We're on Worldview Weekend Radio Network with Brannon House, Prepper Broadcasting Network, and on the Objective Radio Network with Stephen Menking. And, of course, all of our episodes are on our flagship website, SoaringEagleRadio.com. Tracy Beanz is an investigative journalist and has been in the thick of the political intrigue that is Washington, D.C., as well as reporting on what I call and refer to global evils, global machinations that, we'll get into all of that. Tracy, welcome to Soaring Eagle Radio.
Thanks for having me. That's a great introduction. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I appreciate you accepting the invitation. And so for our listeners' sake, a lot of our folks listen to the Hagmans and some other platforms on the Objective, so they're familiar with you already, but there might be a few that are not. So, Tracy, I wonder right out of the gate if you just share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure, absolutely. I have been an activist for almost 20 years, but really started focusing more on the journalism aspect of things about 3 years ago, leading up to the WikiLeaks releases of the Podesta emails. And that's when it really kind of took off for me. I started adding in like the YouTube sort of, vertical to things and kind of moved from Facebook to Twitter and just really kicked it up a notch because I saw this information that a newly awakened populace didn't realize had been going on for so long, and they needed somebody to explain it to them in a very straightforward way. And I sort of said, all right, well, this is why I'm here right now, so I might as well take that hat and try and wear it the best I can. So I started really just with very deep dives into the WikiLeaks Podesta emails and the DNC leaks. And then, when we all thought Guccifer was a real thing, the Guccifer dumps. And it's just gone upwards from there. So that's sort of my background.
Yes. Well, thank you for that, Tracy. You did mention Twitter, and folks may find, my listeners don't, because I've said it a number of times, but Twitter is the place to go if you want to figure out what's happening and what the latest news is. And I know some people chuckle at that, Tracy, but I'm on there every day, and you get some great leads on Twitter, don't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a bunch of us who, we're not really formally affiliated, but we bounce off one another. And breaking news, you want it. It's sadly on Twitter. You get things there before anybody else gets them. And
Fortunately, there are many Christians today who are on the wrong side of this issue, and they are operating completely by emotion, not by reason, not by an understanding of the Scripture. There is good support, and this may shock people, but there is good support for the position and the direction that this administration has taken in handling this, and biblically speaking, we are doing the right thing. Now, I'll just leave that at that, but
it's a great place. We can talk that way. We can speak to that because, just look at it from this perspective to lend more of like a, global politics sort of a theme to it. We have a new president in Mexico. I believe he was elected today, who has decided that, he's going to loosen up restrictions on the cartels. He's going to loosen up restrictions on, all the gun running and everything. He's going to take the military out of the police and let the police do the jobs on their own, which we know will then just foster, crime in Mexico that we've been working really hard with the Mexican government to try to curtail. Yes. And this gentleman is encouraging the people in his country to migrate to the United States, which to me sort of seems more like a call for an invasion. Yeah. Because if if he's such a great leader, why are you encouraging your people to leave? And why would your people want to leave? They just voted you into office. Why? Like, what is going on? It's big. I think it's something that people are really not paying enough attention to. This guy is basically calling for anybody to illegally immigrate into the United States because it is, quote, a human right.
Wow, that's a good point. I had not read that, Trace. That's an excellent point, though. You're right. If you're elected, you're the president, you're going to do all these things for your nation. Why are you telling people to leave? Of course, my mind would go immediately to the fact that, well, those are your marching orders. You've been. You've been.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're part of ginning it up and keeping it stirred up, right?
Well, we need to know, I think, who's supporting this gentleman. Yep. Where's his money coming from? Who on the darker side of things is he working with? Is there an OFA connection? Is there a Soros connection? Who's feeding that frenzy down there? I'm sure that it's not organic. I'm sure he's not now in office organically. I mean, we'd have to be silly.
Right. Yeah.
To believe otherwise.
That doesn't happen anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So, there's that.
Yeah. Before we move on, though, I do want to make these points for our listeners, Tracy. I mentioned that there's a strong biblical support for immigration policy and for detaining folks that are trying to illegally come into this nation. First of all, immigration must, not we should. It's a moral responsibility. It must be regulated. A nation simply cannot and should not allow for mass invasion by whoever shows up at its borders. Now, that's the first point, and that can be biblically supported. And secondly, there has to be a vetting process. And that vetting process is for the safety of a nation's citizens, and that is the primary responsibility of a government. It's bound by law and morals to protect its own citizens as a primary mission. And then finally, the Bible speaks very clearly, Tracy, and I talked with my guest the other night about this, that God has established sovereign nations with recognizable borders, and enforcement of those is consistent with God's design. So I just want our listeners to understand that what Tracy's talking about here has a very strong biblical basis for doing exactly what needs to be done. So back to you.
Well, as you're talking, kind of things are popping into my head. I'm a libertarian, and so what you're saying, it from a biblical standpoint really jives with libertarians, even conservatism. The golden rule, do what's right, moral and just law, all of those things. And it just led me to start thinking about how several years ago, the beginning of the end of the Libertarian Party began, where they started bringing people in and moving the party very, very far to the left and starting to kind of lean more on an anarchist sort of a way, borders are not freedom. More of like a globalist take on libertarianism, free movement, things like that, which is why you'll find a lot of people against the wall that aren't for Trump. But it's it was a very slow progression forward to get to this point. For years and years, we had the Democrats saying that they wanted, even 2 years ago, they wanted a strong border. I don't know what's happened. It's like everybody's just gone crazy. I think that we should do an experiment. You want to hear what I think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Let's get some of these folks, some of these politicians, and we will take them to, let's say, Huntington Station, Long Island, where MS-13 is a very big problem. And we'll put them in a home, and we'll take the locks off all the doors, and we'll take the doors off the front and the back, and we'll sit them there with no weapons, and we will wait for it to get dark outside, and we'll film what happens when they can't secure themselves inside their own home.
Oh boy. We know what would happen.
Yeah, and I feel like they know this, but that's really the only real world way. It would be like, what's that movie, The Purge? I don't remember what movie it is, where they basically the doors, the whole neighborhood locks down. And if you're outside, it's every man for himself.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. And isn't that the one of the maddening things about progressives? I often refer to them as Marxists. They're not all Marxists, I guess, but they sure act like it. But anyway, it's the maddening thing. There doesn't seem to be any reason or logic at all. It's just all agenda driven. And they don't really care about the outcome, even though the outcome will destroy them. I mean, it's just crazy.
Well, they just move. And I have a lot of progressive followers that follow me and listen to me. And, they're coming around. A lot of them are, because they're understanding that this is not what we want at all. I mean, I think that they're becoming either socially liberal conservatives or, actual classical liberals rather than that progressive label that has been slapped on them, because they're realizing that it's fascism, it's Marxism, it's not what they were force-fed it to be.
That's right.
And I think overplaying their hand, the fact that these people, the power structure has overplayed their hand to such a degree, is making it easier for people to kind of be shook awake to what's happening. So we have to look at it like an opportunity also.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that. And I hope that folks are paying attention. I see it all over Twitter. People are really starting to just walk away from the Democratic Party, aren't they?
Yeah, it's been some of the most inspirational. When I get down, because I see, Twitter is like a wasteland. If you're going to be there, you have to understand you get really great information, but you'll have to agree with me, right? It's kind of a wasteland of filth. Yeah. It's not always pleasant to spend all your time there, but I've been reading these stories, of #WalkAway. A gentleman from New York started this campaign to get people to walk away from the Democrat Party because it doesn't represent their values. It is inspirational to see. Thousands and thousands and thousands of stories.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I see it, and I'm encouraged by it because I think finally, the left has overplayed their hand, as you said, and I think that's exactly what's happened. They've overplayed their hand, and I've made an observation about that, Tracy, before, and I think it's applicable here. When evil gets to a place where it thinks it cannot be defeated, when evil doers think that they have won the day, they've won the field of battle, so to speak, they become very arrogant, first of all, and they really don't make much effort in hiding what they're doing. Their agenda becomes laid bare for anybody who has eyes to see. And I kind of characterize the days that we're living in as such. Things are just, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, it is so obvious what is happening, and it makes you wonder why other people don't see it. What do you think?
I agree with you. Yeah, you just can't believe it. And I try to be, I try to have some sort of empathy and put myself in other shoes, and try and understand that they're programmed, they've been lied to at such a level that I don't think if it's hard because, there are some of them that just believe that we're evil and we're horrible people that don't deserve to be here. And, yes, but there are a lot of people that are just brainwashed. Yeah. And so it's sad, but
Yep.
Some of them won't come along, but most of them will, hopefully.
Yes. Amen. Folks, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. We've got a lot more to talk about, so stay with us. We'll be right back.
Clean Foods for You is dedicated to providing the best quality food you can buy next to fresh from a farmer's market. Our stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMO and testing for heavy metals makes us unique in the storable foods market. Try our products today and join the many others in discovering the best clean foods available in the storable food market. Order online at www.cleanfoodsforyou.com.
Dr. Mike Spaulding has hit a home run with his new book, #MTPGA, Make the Pulpit Great Again, 12 Things Christians Can Do Right Now. In Make the Pulpit Great Again, Dr. Spaulding has addressed some of the gravest ills plaguing the American pulpit. Only through a policy of complacency and compromise adopted by the nation's pastors has the once great United States ceded the moral high ground and set the standard for the rest of the world in pornography, addiction, privation, and the murder of untold millions killed in state-sponsored, taxpayer-funded abortion mills. The words in Dr. Spaulding's book contain the secret to restoring this country to her former glory. For if we are ever to make America great again, we must first have a national call to repentance by our church leaders. We must make the pulpit great again. Available on Amazon and other retail sellers.
Hi, friends. Works LLC is a manufacturer of custom-made holsters, mag carriers, knife sheaths, and accessories. Works is your one-stop shop for high-quality inside or outside the waistband concealed carry holster. Works LLC is a Christian and family-owned and operated company that values made in the USA. They are a proud sponsor of Soaring Eagle Radio. Visit Works LLC, www.werkz.com, works.com, and when you do, tell Shan that you heard about him on Soaring Eagle Radio. Works LLC, 855-937-5901, 855-937-5901, Works LLC. All right, folks, thanks for listening, checking out our sponsors. We appreciate that very much. I'm chatting with Tracy Beanz, and it's been a fantastic conversation so far. Just getting right down to the brass tacks.
Well, I don't. How can you not be a fan of it? I mean, I don't know. I just.
Yeah. I agree completely. And so, yeah, folks, you need to wake up and see. And I don't care what you think personally of him. Just look at his record. Look at what he's doing. And you can't deny that what he's doing is good for this nation. So let's talk about the so-called swamp. And I hate to use that, Tracy, because that is so overused. I mean, it's like red pill, blue pill. I mean, a few years ago, that was the term to use. It was very descriptive, and people were curious. What does that mean? And so you were able to explain that. But now it's used so much. It's like, well, okay.
That's only because we've brought it into our movement so much, and those people are new. So to us oldies, we're like, oh, enough already. To them, they're just hearing it for the first time.
That's a good point. That is a good point. Yeah, but it is. I guess that leads to this question. It is our responsibility. I know it's one that you take seriously, and so do the other folks that run in the same circles and are trying to do the same things. The honeybee, for example, Craig Salman Sawyer, the Hagmans, Common Sense, and I could go on and on. You know the whole lineup. We take this very seriously, that we are trying to help people understand, and again, I hesitate to use a worn-out illustration or analogy, but it really is a little bit like the Matrix. We're trying to wake people up to reality that they've been living in a dream world, and if they'll just open their eyes and see, then they can experience true freedom and liberty, because that's really what this is all about. We're not trying to destroy another political party, although I would like to see it become defunct. But what we're trying to do is wake people up to our great heritage as Americans with freedom and liberty. Isn't that what we're trying to do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That word's becoming popular again.
Yes.
Liberty.
Yes, liberty. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility, but one, yes, like you said, I take it very, very, very seriously. There are people that are coming to me for information that they expect to be the truth because they're lied to everywhere else. So it's very, very important to me that I work with integrity and make sure all of the information that I put out is correct. And of course, I've made mistakes, but they're very quickly retracted or corrected. There is no, there's no way around that. It's just the journalist creed has to come back into the forefront again.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it does. And if we'll do that and keep pressing that point, then people that are, well, they're becoming vigilantes. Right now it's just intimidation, verbal abuse, but I'm concerned that it might escalate beyond that. I mean, I think of Sarah Sanders, I think of Kirsten Nielsen and some others who've been really accosted in public places. And I'm concerned that if this level of hostility and vitriol continues, Tracy, somebody is going to get hurt. And that will not be a good thing when that day happens. But it very well may. What do you think?
Well, we need look no further than Portland, Oregon this weekend. Wow. It already happened. So, I don't think that these Antifa folk who are likely being paid, however many dollars an hour to go out there and throw smoke bombs and hit people with sticks realize that they're coming up against American patriots who most of the time have, a lot of them have law enforcement, former military, or just passion inside their hearts for this country, or just they're tough. They're tough, they're tough in spirit. They're tough physically. They're not coddled. They're not, playing with coloring books and, hiding in closets and safe spaces. And they're not afraid. And this one gentleman knocked this guy out, knocked him down flat. He was done. I mean, he was out. Did you see the video?
I did.
Gosh.
I thought, oh my goodness, he was swinging a stick, and he got about 3 swings in, and the guy just took it away from him. For those that haven't seen it yet, just took it away from him, and laid a right hook on him, and he was out before he hit the ground. The
man who hit with the stick had to have weighed maybe 140 pounds max, and the guy that hit him was 250 pounds of pure muscle.
Yes, right, yeah. So that whole thing was crazy.
Yeah, and I don't want to see that happen anymore. So what I did a week or so ago is I basically wrote a thread on Twitter, which is the equivalent of a short article, I guess. And I said, no matter what side of the aisle you're on ideologically, if you're a real moral good American, you don't agree with this rhetoric. You don't agree with what's happening. You have to, you don't. You're just afraid to speak out because you're afraid to be shunned. But there are many more of you than there are of them. And you need to understand that the mainstream media, the left-wing activists, the power structure makes you feel small because that's the last bastion of power they have over you. So we could talk about healthcare and, whatever later. If we don't do this now and stop this nonsense, we won't have a country to talk about those things for.
Good point.
So it's time to put everything aside, and good Americans, good moral, loving Americans need to join together and denounce what's happening right now in terms of rhetoric and violence from both sides.
Yes, and
just be decent humans.
Yeah. That'd be a good place to start, wouldn't it? Just remember that we all share a common bond. We are all Americans, folks. We are all American citizens, and we should be looking out for the interests of one another and standing against what's being forced upon us, this hostility and hatred, simply because we have a different point of view, politically speaking. This nation has weathered 240 odd years, having different opinions. People have had different opinions politically, and now all of a sudden we can't do that. Folks should understand that alone should be reason for them to scratch their head and say, what really is going on here? What exactly is the issue? Who is behind all of this, pulling these strings that all of a sudden, because the left, Tracy, I remember, I can go all the way back to LBJ, JFK. I'm old enough to remember Hubert Humphrey and all of these guys. And I can tell you, there was never this kind of hatred and hostility between Democrats and Republicans, independents, what have you, that all of a sudden, since Trump got in office, it has just gone off the charts. I remember these same people that are hateful now were preaching peace and tolerance when Obama was in office.
Yeah, and I think that the bigger 40,000-foot view, that was beautifully said, by the way, the bigger 40,000-foot view is that it's not because of Republican views or conservative views and liberal or Democrat views. It's because their very grip on power and the things that they've done, the corrupt, disgusting, criminal, traitorous, treasonous, murderous things that they've done over the past few decades are about to be laid bare in front of everybody. And so what we're witnessing is the death throes, for lack of a better term, of the corrupt power structure that was hell-bent on one world government and another 8 years to finish that goal.
Yep.
They're dying.
Yes.
And that's why you see the distractions whenever there's hearings or whenever there's like a new report dropped, there's some kind of a false flag terror attack. Something always happens. People are wise to this now. It's not so far-fetched anymore. The word conspiracy theorist doesn't have a meaning anymore.
Right.
Just like the word racist, homophobe, Islamophobe, all these things, it's like Animal Farm.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a good illustration right there. Yep, you're absolutely right. And folks, what Tracy's talking about, what we've been talking about here is that the United States has been run for several decades by a cabal. They've drug us into wars for no other reason than to profit the companies of their supporters and their buddies. They've drug us into wars to topple governments that just wouldn't see eye to eye, or in other words, let me translate that, do what we said we wanted them to do, i.e. join into the central banking cartel. We've gone into nations and overthrown them with no reason whatsoever. That's the government of the United States, folks, and it grieves me because I'm a military veteran, come from a military family, and I look back on the wars that this nation has entered into in a good many cases for no other reason than to profit those that are in the business of building weapons. And I hate saying it that way, Tracy, but I think it's the truth.
I would agree with you. It's one of the reasons why Ron Paul was shunned the way he was and called an isolationist. And Thankfully, we're starting to see President Trump adopt some of that non-interventionalist foreign policy. Yeah. Everyone thought he was going to be the one to bring World War III, and quite to the contrary. This is a peacemaking president. He went in and destroyed ISIS in not even how long? It was like 8 months or 9 months or something. Yeah, and Obama didn't do that. It was a grand plan that is failing now. It's I will say that it has been a wonderful experience for me, because as frustrated as the folks are who are new to this, I think, obviously you've been in this game for a long time too. Yeah. You can see the difference. Like, we can talk about these things now and not be looked at like we're nuts. And that in and of itself is massive.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's very true, Tracy. People now, when you tell them, they kind of look at you. They may have a little puzzle on their face, but they're not looking at you like, oh, whatever,
Sean Hannity is talking about the deep state on Fox News.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. Like, it's crazy. It is. And we're saying cabal, and everybody's like, oh yeah, the cabal. Yeah. Like, it's such a change. It's so amazing and beautiful. Like, in 18 years that I've been doing this, 18 years, I've seen a lot of change. And this has been the fastest, the most positive, the most loving, and the most uplifting of all of them, even despite all of the craziness that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's the end for them. It really is. There is no coming back from this. People are awake now.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to be the same.
Nothing. Well, that's right. That's right. Because once people get a taste of, now, as soon as I was going to say, once people get a taste of liberty, they'll never turn back. But I am a little concerned, and I'd like to hear your perspective, Tracy. I am a little concerned about the younger generation, especially the millennials. There seems to be an enchantment, if you will. It's almost like it's some kind of magical hex or spell that's put on our kids. And I don't want to blame completely our education system, but the government education system does bear a large measure of responsibility. But it seems like young people are enamored with socialism. I don't get it. Maybe it's because they don't really know what it is, and they're just reading about it in textbooks, and they've got these professors that are painting this rosy picture. What do you think?
I agree with you. They don't know what it is. You can do a very simple experiment in a classroom about socialism based around grades. Take.
Yeah.
I mean, just do that to your students. See who puts any effort in at the end of the semester after a full semester of that grading system. They don't know what socialism is. I think it should be a mandatory trip to Venezuela.
Yes.
And that's why what they are doing right now in terms of federal control or lack thereof over education is so amazing, and why we've got Betsy being attacked so frequently, because they're revolutionizing it. I always thought they should bring back Charlotte Iserby, and she can really teach people how to do the right thing.
Amen. That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. What was the name of her seminal work? It was I have it. Oh boy. Now I'm going to have to look that up. But look up Charlotte Iserby and correct me here, Tracy. I think it's Iserbyt.
Yes, it's the deliberate dumbing down of America.
So
is the name of the book.
That's it. The deliberate dumbing down of America. Yeah. Go out there and get that, folks, and it is an eye opener for sure.
From the Reagan administration, actually, too.
Yes. Yeah. Well, one more thing, just to hammer home this point about socialism. What was her name? Alexandria Cortez. Cortez. Just well, it's a big political story, right? It's the primary in New York State. She took out who was it? I don't remember now, but she's like 20-something years old. And
it's really funny because they're already saying she's going to run for president. Well, first of all, that pesky Constitution is back. You're a little too young, lady. You got a little time.
Yep.
But they're basically, it reminds me of Obama, and it's kind of scary.
Yes. Well, and we all know how that works. If you are the anointed one, they're going to clear the deck, and they're going to put you in office. I know that might sound cynical to some folks, Tracy, but how else do you explain the Obama phenomenon? Because that's exactly what it was.
No, yeah, it was. And, he didn't run his presidency anyway, circling back all the way to the WikiLeaks emails. Citibank was basically picking his cabinet for him. It's there in black and white. They were talking about that way before, a month or two before he was even actually voted into office, which is another big red flag. So, yeah, it just seemed to me like she was a chosen one. And that's just,
That's how it is. Yeah, that's how it's done. I know that sounds cynical, folks, but that is how it's done. Follow Tracy, folks, on Twitter if you want to keep up with her and the latest news and everything that's going on. At Tracy Beanz on Twitter. But also, Tracy, you've got a Patreon page where folks can support you. You want to tell us about that?
Oh, that'd be wonderful. It really helps because I'm doing this full time, completely supported by you guys. It is patreon.com/Tracy Beanz with a Z. Any amount is wonderful and very, very helpful. And thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. But Tracy, I've really enjoyed our conversation, and hopefully we can circle back and do this again soon.
I'd love to. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're very welcome, and thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time, folks. Soaring Eagle Radio is a production of Transforming Word Ministries and is released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. You may subscribe to the show on iTunes, follow us on Facebook where you can discuss this episode, and follow Soaring Eagle Radio on Twitter at Soaring Eagle Rad, and listen to every episode from our website, www.soaringeagleradio.com. The opening audio montage collection was created by Micah68 Productions. Visit them on the internet at www.mika68.com for more information. Friends, remember the Apostle Paul's admonition to the believers meeting in Rome. Therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. I'm your host, Mike Spaulding. Thank you for joining us today for this edition of Soaring Eagle Radio.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Soaring Eagle Radio program. For more information about the show, write us at Soaring Eagle Radio, 682 West Grand Avenue, Lima, Ohio, 45801. You may also contact Mike directly by email at the following address, pastormike@woh.rr.com. God bless you today as you seek Him.